Now then, what's in the boxes? Well, there you go. My Owen came down to see us a few weeks ago. Might even been a month ago now. Anyway, and he brought various bits and pieces with him that he'd rescued, and in these boxes there's the product of that. So let's have a look. So there you go. What have we got here? Now, these are lithium iron phosphate batteries, and that is a 12 volt unit, and that's a 12 volt unit, and underneath all this lot here there's another 12 volt unit, and then there are 3 other cells there to make up 15S, because pylon techs are 15S, and those extra cells down there are prismatic cells, and this is one of them here, and that is 70 amp hours. So I believe, well, let's just zoom out a bit and come round here to these other cells. If you can see, 1 2 3 1 2 3, so that is 3 pouches in parallel. So we got 3 pouches, 3 3 and 3, and they are 60 amp hours each. So I basically built a 15S pack, 15S 3P pack. So there we go. So we can normally call this 60 amp hours, yeah, from fully charged to fully discharged, which at that rate there's 20 amp hours to the kilowatt at 48 volts nominal. But you wouldn't want to discharge it all the way, so you can quite easily say there is 2 kilowatt in one of these boxes. Now I made the boxes, and simply it's now I don't know the best way to show you this. Hang on a second. So I trimmed up, this is 1/2 inch plywood. It's vintage plywood, as it were, because this came from the floor of an early Bluebird caravan that was getting broken up, and they were going to burn this plywood, and it's beautiful stuff. Anyway, so that's 15 inches wide by I think 10 inches, and I put a lump of timber, some people call it batten, something like that, all the way around the outside, one along the top, one along the bottom, to the sides, screwed it from in there. That gives a solid end, and then of course the sides can get screwed on there, and then the bottom get fixed, and you know, a little bit of thought, and then it's quite robust, and then put a handle on the end. So there you go. And then these bits are battened down the side and along the bottom, just hold it together more, and it holds it off the floor and all those sorts of things. So I'll put a link to a video that Owen did of us taking apart one of these, I think they're LG units, yeah, so that'll be interesting. And then we have this BMS. Okay, now this is a JBD BMS that I bought from Fogstar. With all these things there's very little documentation. I had to hunt around for a wiring diagram, but I finally got there. Now this BMS is one of these self-sensing units, so it can work from 8S up to 21S, which is great. So we've got it set up as 15S, yeah, just to keep all the batteries smooth. Now I'll just find the wiring diagram and we'll have a look at that. So here's the JBD wiring. So negative, and that's negative to the negative battery terminal, yeah. So obviously it switches the negative when it's either under or over voltage. And then here is the balancing wires. Well, that's fair enough. And then the next diagram, this is for 15S. So 0, which is the black wire here, goes to negative, and then number 1 goes between cell 1 and cell 2, and it goes along until we're on number 12, and then 13 to 19, yeah, are all connected together, and they go between 13 and 14 cell, that connection, effectively the positive of number 13, and then 20 goes positive of 14, 21 goes positive of 15. Yep. And then as we see here also the positive goes up, and that is the charge discharge, as in the negative on C minus is charge discharge. So it's one of those things where you've got to take your time, and you've got to remember the black naught is the negative. So that's the negative terminal, so that is the black 0 wire, and you're working all the way through. Because of these LG cells, it's quite interesting because the BMS was in the box, top of the case. Yes, you had this circuit board here, and I think you can just about see there. Where are we? There's the socket that goes to the BMS, but then there's these terminals. You see this one, the red one, it goes to a solder joint there, but it's actually connected to the positive terminal. And this one down here, yeah, which will be number 20 wire, yeah, it's connected to the join between that number 2 cell effectively and number 1 cell. Okay, so it was easy to connect to those, but you just have to take your time. And then there, whoop, that's where a lot of them connect together on number 13. Take your time, think it through, yeah, and what have you. That's just the inverter clicking over. Okay. And of course they plug in, all these lot plug into there. I have a short bit of footage showing measuring those connections, so I'll add that in now. So we have got a, let's just see if we can do this. It's all very fiddly. So we go between there and there. That's 6.5, yes. But we can't go next, can we? 3.3, 6.5, 9.8, 13, 16.4, 19.7, 23, 26, 29, 32.9, 36, 39, 42 and 42 is the same, because they're all the, because that's getting into cell 13. Okay, so that's that. I wonder if we can continue. I'm going to move this on its side. Yeah, okay, so we need to go from the negative there. Yeah, and we're continuing on. All of those are the same. That one is 49.3, that one's 46, that one's 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. So they're all right, they are all correct. And the one interesting thing is, that's the negative. So from the negative through into that Henley block, then into the BMS, and then the other end we've got the negative C minus into this block, and then that's the negative. Yeah. So the positive there is fused, and anybody who saw Dead Men's Sheds video, yeah, there we are, that's the positive fuse. So we've used one of those industrial fusers. That's 50 amp, that'll do. So there you go, we did it. Yeah, it seems to be working. I'm not quite sure what's happening with the inverter. Something's switching on and off. Okay, we're on 20 volt scale, 3.35, one down here, 3.36, 3.36, 3.36. These are just very gradually coming up. They were stuck when I first charged them up in that video, and I charged them up really slowly because they were less than 1 volt. And so I used a 12 volt battery charger, but with a variac to reduce the input voltage, which effectively controlled the current. So we're charging at less than 1 amp, and that was fine. Yeah, but for like 24 hours, and it just brought them up from less than 1 volt up to 3.2 ish. So I was able to then build this pack, and now over time they're equalizing and the voltage is rising. It's taking quite a long time because there's 2 of these packs for a start, yes, and then there's 4 pylon techs. So everything is sort of balancing out and lifting very slowly. So these seem like they seem to be reasonable. One of those prismatics down there is lagging behind, so I think I might have to change it. But if you notice, you might notice there's a lump of plywood there and a threaded bar. So with all these lithium cells, they must be in compression, yeah, whilst they're charging, or else they'll start expanding. So because I've only used 3 prismatics, 1, 2 and 3, they're not in the original case, so I've organised a clamping arrangement there. Right, this is the other pack, and I've just put a little bit of stainless steel strap there just to reflect that light. That seems to work. A little bit of polished stainless steel, quite thin. Now then, how do these BMSs work? Well, Lee sent me a link to an article of a Australian electrical engineer who's having trouble with his Hyundai electric car. So there's several things here that are of interest. And when I looked on the JBD website, eventually I dug into it and found out that these were controlled by passive resistance, and this really works in with what was on that article. This engineer was saying that these little thin wires, those ones there, there's nothing to do with charging. What the BMS does is it highlights the cells that are high and sniffs the top off the voltage, hence the passive resistance. So it keeps the high ones from going above a certain level and allows the low ones to catch up, and it's quite a gradual process. And this, so it seems, links in with electric cars and fast charging. So if you fast charge the battery on an electric car frequently, then the battery charges up too quick for the BMS to let the low ones charge up and the high ones to be held back. Yeah, and so you start to lose your capacity. So slow charging electric car will prevent that, but also it will help to reinstate the low cells if you've had a period of rapid charging. How much it will do if you've really done a lot of rapid charging, I don't know. But passive resistance, so it holds back the high voltage and lets the low voltage catch up. Interesting, eh? It is interesting that BMS is self-sensing, and you know, it goes between 8 and 21S. It means it's quite multifunctional. And you may have noticed earlier on a little blue light flashing. Well, I think that is the Bluetooth. So it's Bluetooth, yeah, so you can talk to it. I've hunted around, and I think on the JBD website, and it's Jahai, whatever it is, I can't pronounce it. If you go under any of the BMSs there's 3/4 of the way down in the details, there is a link to somewhere where you can get the software. Yeah, so but I'm going to use a tablet, and hopefully I'll be able to load that software, and then I'll be able to talk to these. I've tried with my laptop, and it actually senses them and goes, oh, these are here, but I can't talk to them. Yeah, so hopefully you'll find this interesting. Well, like with all of this stuff, the amount of information available is all a bit vague. Yeah, it's not what you would call, I don't know, I think professional is a little bit of a, they just don't seem to want to tell you all the finer details. Like they don't tell you that there's a little blue light for the Bluetooth. Yeah, so you wire this up, then you wire up the negative, and then you connect the balancing wires. And if you do it in that sequence, then it just comes to life and away you go. Yeah. Questions, comments, yeah. Like, why am I building this? Well, my friend Owen brought me the batteries, which was marvellous. Okay, I paid him the price that he paid in the scrapyard, and it was a bit of a shot in the dark, or a bit of an experiment, but it seems to mostly have worked out all right. So we got 2 packs, very similar, with a JBD BMS in each, and they were £65. and they were delivered within 48 hours, and that was from Fogstar. So you can go and have a look on the Fogstar website and you'll find these. I think it's a thing, I've looked on eBay at pylon techs, and now the summer's over, there don't seem to be any pylon techs, second-hand pylon techs available. So there's a sort of bit of a buyer flurry going on eBay with these pylon techs, because I got hold of a couple of, let me just show you. I got hold of a couple of these extra 2000s. Yeah, they're a fairly old unit, but I didn't pay very much for them. It was one of those things where you just walk into it and you have to take a risk. Very much the same with these LG cells, and one of those was flat and the other one was dead, and there are some videos about that. But the one that was dead, I lifted the heatsink up and there was a little ceramic fuse and it was blown, and so I just soldered a bit of wire across it and it came back to life. But how many people would actually take heat sinks off to get to stuff in the experiment? I'm not quite sure. But there you go. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. Also, just whilst we're here, the continuing of this Prius nickel metal hydride battery, it's just been sat there ticking away. I suppose I ought to just survey it now and just make sure everything's alright, but we've been rather involved with this lot. Okay, interesting stuff. Comment please, discussion, tell me what you think. It's a cheaper way of doing it, and please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and like, and get yourself a copy of Tales of Power, my new book, available on the net or direct from Bimble Solar. Catch up with you soon. Cheers for now.